How do you find a way to get rid of the deep sadness so that you can be happy? You're trying to work on yourself, but feel very stuck and don't know what to do from here. So, Kara, the first question I have is, are you able to connect your sadness to something? Is there, and you don't, if you're not comfortable answering it here, you don't have to. I would just, and Lily number 3. Hi, Lily. How are you? I'm good. Glad you're here. I just want you to kind of ask yourself, is there something that you can connect? Is that unhappiness or that sadness, is it rooted in something? Because sadness comes from a couple of different places, right? Sadness, oh yes, but it's not one thing, it's about 3 things that were significant. Okay, cool. I mean, not cool that you're sad, but cool that you know what they are. So without going into a whole lot of personal detail, because I have to be careful that I don't attempt counseling here. So any advice I give, you have to understand, is going to be kind of generic, right? But when there are situations that are sad, and let me go back to say that there's a couple of different kinds of sadness. There's the sadness that's chemical, that we don't, hi Amy, there's sadness that's chemical that doesn't get rooted. It's just this heaviness, this depressive kind of sensation that actually is manifested because of a chemical imbalance, right? There's not enough dopamine, not enough serotonin, something along those lines. But then there's sadness that's created because there are sad things that happen in life. And for those things, you have to go back to the thing. Now, some people would say you don't have to go back to the thing. I think you have to go back to the thing. And you know, sometimes I kind of wish it was that so I could take the medications and go, right. So I think that going back to the thing and processing the thing, and there's a lot of different ways to do this, right? There's forgiveness work, there's letting go work, and there's acceptance work. And I would say that those 3 things aren't necessarily mutually exclusive, but it's almost always, at least in my experience, and of course everything I say is caveated, but I would say that it's forgiveness, acceptance, and letting go. Those are the things that have to happen to those things that are driving the sadness. Now, this is super hard when the sadness or the thing is persistent in your life, right? For example, let's see, I'm trying to think, maybe a job loss or a health issue. And even then, I would say that to some extent, we have to double check ourselves, because those people that come back from war and they've lost their legs and they still find a way to be happy, or the people who I'm reminded of the police officer that was burned from head to toe and is really scarred, almost unrecognizable, and yet found a happiness or a way to be happy. And that kind of tells us that, again, there's lots of variables depending on the kind of person you are and the kind of stories you tell yourself. And I mean, there's so many little components. But I tell clients to try a 30-day, and this is not foolproof, right? This is not a cure. But some clients find relief in this protocol for 30 days, daily gratitude practice. As much gratitude as you can, even if it's the same things over again. Often I say 3 things and make them different, but I would say when we're trying to recover from sadness, it's important to just have a gratitude practice. And it's twice a day. You're sitting down and you're really paying attention, noticing all of the things in your life that there are to be grateful for. So that's number 1, a gratitude practice. Number 2 is to get outside, to get outdoors when you can. Put your face to the sun, put sunscreen on. I mean, I've had people say, well, I can't get in this. Okay. Put your hat on, let the sun warm you. We get vitamin D from the sun, and low vitamin D promotes feelings of sadness. So get outdoors for a minimum of 15 minutes twice a day. So people tell me all the time, well, I don't have time to just go out and sit in the sun. Okay, get on the phone and walk in the sunshine. If the sun isn't shining where you are, or if the only times that you can get outside, then you need to get under a bright light. Like literally this ring light, you probably can see it. This ring light is so big and so bright. It doesn't really qualify as a sun lamp, but it's a bright light. And they don't do the same thing, but if you can get daylight bulbs that simulate daylight and sunlight and make sure that you sit in that brightness, that can help. So it's gratitude, getting outside. Connection is number 3. Connect with someone somehow every day. So if you're going for a walk, every single person that you pass, say hello to. Some of them won't talk to you. And I'm not ignoring all your questions and stuff, but if I talk or if I look at the comments while I'm talking, I'll lose my train of thought. So the connection, make a phone call every single day. Family, friend, it has to be a positive person, somebody who feeds you. If you can't do any of that, then connect through writing. Now, I have clients who go into support groups on someplace like Facebook or Reddit, and they contribute, and they'll offer life experience to people that they have the opportunity to. And it's not the optimal connection, but it is some kind of connecting. It's a giving of yourself, whether it's a smile, a hello, advice, some kind of pleasantry. Movement. Now you can combine the outdoors with the movement if you want, by taking a walk, riding a bicycle, going for a run. But if you're not doing that outside, if outside is sitting on your deck doing an office meeting or a business meeting, then make sure that you have some kind of movement, whether it's a walk, bicycle, run, maybe it's yoga for 30 minutes or 15 minutes. And then the last thing is some kind of mindfulness activity. Minimum of 15 minutes of mindfulness. You can do mindful cooking, mindful eating, mindful sex, mindful walking. So walking can really, if you do it for a little bit longer, it can really take care of a lot of these different things. But a mindful walking is listening to a guided mindful walking meditation while you're doing the walking in the sunshine, and then it's all 3 things. So then all you have to do is connect, and you can talk to people while you're doing that, or you can connect with people while you're doing that, not really while you're being mindful, but maybe the second part of your walk. And then all you have to do is practice gratitude, which technically you could also do during your walk. So if you want to go walk for an hour and do 20 minutes of mindfulness, 20 minutes of connecting, and 20 minutes of gratitude, you will feel better. Is it a panacea? No. But happiness, and so this is another question I would ask you, what's your definition of happiness, right? some people have a faulty definition of happiness. And what we know, there's actually two kinds of happiness. There's hedonic happiness that, oh my God, I'm so excited. This is amazing. I feel so happy. And then there's the eudaimonic kind of happiness, the life is good. So what's your definition of happiness? What we also know, by the way, based on those two definitions, is that the second one is sustainable, whereas the first one is not. There's something called a hedonic treadmill that's really talked a lot about in positive psychology, and that's this idea that if we're too hyper-focused on hedonic happiness, then we're always looking for the next thing, the next job, the next raise, the next adventure, the next house, the next something to be happy. And the next thing gives us that little rush, but then we're unsettled again and we're waiting for the next thing. So I would say, really take a look at what's my definition of happiness, and perhaps a sense of peace, a sense of being centered, a sense of calm is more sustainable in one's life. And then maybe that's how we define happiness. Breaking walls down in order to face the pain is usually not what you want to do. Ooh, Katie, nobody wants to do that. You know, I was thinking about this earlier today. I drove a lot this weekend, and when I drive, I listen to podcasts or I listen to books, and I was thinking about some of the comments on a couple of my videos lately about how people would never take their kids to see me, or maybe I should go back to school, or you know, whatever these negative comments were. And a couple of them were, therapists are all screwed up, you know, we shouldn't listen to therapists, so on and so forth. And I thought, you know, what's interesting is that when you go to grad school to become a therapist, it's almost forced that you look at all the stuff in your life, right? Now, for me, it was like 3-4 years of just solid and incredibly challenging therapy, because I was in my 40s and I took the time to really allow all the work that I learned. Like every time we had to write a paper, I would use something from my life to use as kind of the focus for the conceptualization. If we were talking about abandonment, for example, I thought, it's funny because I thought abandonment was maybe one of my primary issues, when what really happened was that because of the abandonment, I developed something called unrelenting standards. And that's kind of one of the defense mechanisms. I didn't talk about it in my video today, but I talked about how abandonment can kind of create these defense mechanisms. Well, for me, it was this unrelenting standard. I developed perfectionism. And the perfectionism was really about controlling for the emotional chaos that was the result of the abandonment, right? But I didn't know that until I went to grad school. And really, I mean, I had been in therapy. Now, it was couples counseling, but I'd been in therapy for probably, I think we were in counseling on and off for 5 years. And she never dove in to ask about any of that kind of stuff. She really took everything I had to say at face value, which there's something to be said about that. But what's fascinating is all of that stuff impacted the way I engaged in my marriage. It impacted who I chose to marry, right? I married a narcissist, and of course it was a horrible marriage. It produced 3 amazing children and lots of other things. Like, I learned so much about myself. But what's really interesting to me is that this idea, I mean, yes, therapists, many of us have really intense stuff in our past. And those of us who become therapists either didn't get helped by a therapist and were hell-bent to change that, or we got helped and faced so much pain as a result of our therapy, or healed so much pain that we want to help other people do that. So, and then almost every state, in Pennsylvania, I had to do 3,600 postgraduate supervised hours. So not only did I spend 3 years in grad school, 2 years of classroom, a year of internship and fellowship, and then an additional 3,600 hours of supervision. So we're trained to identify when our client stuff triggers us. We have to know our triggers if we're going to be trained in that. And it's just pretty fascinating that people have so much to say about things they know nothing about. I wonder if they know that every time they do that, I am conceptualizing their shit. I wonder if they know that. So I guess that was a whole tangent about how breaking apart those things and facing the pain, it's just so important. If it's hard trauma, sometimes you don't need to do that. But I would even say that there is some controversy in the field about how effective the healing is. It's kind of like not letting a bone, not setting a bone. Like the bone will heal eventually, but it'll heal offset or broken. And sometimes when we don't address the trauma, that's what happens. We heal, but we heal super scarred. Whereas if we go in a safe environment, in a safe way, and get to that trauma, then we're setting the fracture and it can heal well. And everybody has a little bit of a different style. So, and every human is different and process is different. Stop. Especially opening oneself to the vulnerability, to be belittled about the pain. Ooh, who is belittling your pain? Holy smokes, that person doesn't need to be an active part of your life. I don't know the circumstances, obviously, but I consider that a definition falling under the category of cruelty. If somebody is going to belittle my pain, that's cruel. Belittling my pain is cruel. Remember that. Don't say that. Don't say what? Chemical imbalance. Stop. Oh, there are chemical imbalance induced depression. That's absolutely true. So I'm not sure if that's what you're talking about, Lily. How to deal with 2-year-old separation anxiety. Oh, Laura, that's such a good question. With love, right? Love and reappearance. And reminding, I imagine you probably know this, right? If you've been in my life for the last couple of weeks, I've talked a lot about how what we do with kids is because we as adults can't find a way to manage the discomfort of the kids experiences, what they're experiencing. And that's the case with a 2-year-old separation anxiety, right? What that 2-year-old needs to know is that you're going to come back every single time. And so when, we'll say, the caregiver pulls them away from you and they're screaming, you have to say, I love you, I'll be back. And then you go and you have a good cry in the car, and then you come back. And some daycares will even have you come back like an hour later one day, and then 2 hours later the next day, and they titrate that down until you're gone 8 hours. But the research pretty much, at least that I'm aware of, is pretty uniform in that the important part here is that it's a loving separation. You go, but you come back. And the harder you make it to separate, the harder it is on the kid, that they can feel that ambivalence. So I would say over the course of 2 weeks, every single day, and if you can, if you have the luxury of coming back in an hour, coming back in 2 hours, coming back in 3 hours, do that. But if not, just make sure that you talk to them about when you're going to come back. Like after you wake up from your nap and after you play with your toys, I'm going to come back. Or when the clock looks like this, and teach, even though they're 2, you can say, when the clock looks like this, I'm coming back, so that they have something to look forward to. Try that. You don't like people talking to you on the streets. Come on, Lily. When I go to New York, I say hi to people on the streets. I don't think that applies to everybody. And I think it's true that it's ingrained in some people, but I think it's weird. I mean, even my daughter says that, and she's a New Yorker, she talks to people on the street. Not everybody. Obviously, there's, it's not just random, but I honestly find New Yorkers to be quite pleasant when I've needed to know things. And I smile at people all the time. And I'll bet if, just saying good morning to people, they might think like, who are you? Because they just assume that everybody's grumpy. Hey, care. Mindfulness, interestingly enough, is a type of meditation. I'll say it this way. All meditation is mindful. Not all mindfulness is meditation. You can do a mindful eating. If you Google mindful eating, you'll find a dozen different things, maybe probably 100 dozen different things. Mindful walking, the same thing. To be honest, many of us already do mindful activities. We just don't do them intentionally. And it's the intention part that becomes really beneficial, because it forces you to consciously slow in and zero in on this one thing. And it shuts out all of the chatter when you get good at it. Hello, Siawak. I am happy to give you some thoughts on a constantly complaining teenager. I've put so much thought, and I've talked to all of my kids about their childhood just in the last week or so. Some really interesting conversations. One of the things they say that I did that I'm not sure that I knew I was doing, but they said, and I think it's just part of who I organically am, but I always wanted to know why. So the first thing I would say to your teenager is, why are you complaining? Now, are you an Eeyore personality? Because that's a personality type. The person who's always finding out what's wrong. Pessimism, actually pessimists can learn how to be optimists, but Eeyore's a little bit different. Eeyore's kind of a complainer. I would challenge that teen to neutralize every complaint. And so I talked a lot about, remember, when I was a kid and we crossed our eyes, we walk around, hurts a little bit more these days, with our eyes crossed, and my mom would say, better watch out, they're going to get stuck like that. So you were always a little bit afraid. Sometimes, if I believe in the law of attraction, then complaining breeds complaint, right? If I see that everything is bad, that's what I'm going to see. And I would challenge your teen to start thinking about that, right? At dinner at night, we would do good thing, bad thing. And so we would, if they complained about something, we'd have to say, I hear you, that sucks. Now tell me something good about your day. And I used to tell the kids that you'd have to say two things in order to neutralize the bad thing. You'd have to find two good things so that, and I think a little bit that's training. So if that's the kind of thing you're talking about, my teacher gave us too much homework. I hate doing the dishes. Those are the kinds of things I'm thinking that you're probably talking about. And that being the case, I would empathize with them a little bit, right? We have to be careful that we don't dive into the arena of toxic positivity. And that sometimes can be a little bit tricky, especially if we're trying to lift the mood. Because at the end of the day, doing the dishes does suck. We've just gotten used to it. So I think to some extent, one of the things I would do is I would lean in to and empathize with the complaint. Like, find out why. What are you complaining about? Why are you complaining about this? Is it legit? Like, does it suck? And then try to find the value in it. Try to find something good about it. We can't do that with everything, but I think there's a great life lesson there that sometimes life only hands us two piles of crap. And you have to hang out with the one that doesn't stink as much as the other one. And that's just reality. So find out, again, why they're complaining, what's the value in the complaint, empathize with them, and then help them kind of sit in that in a more productive way. See if that helps. Yeah, Kate, that's a really good example. Sometimes people complain just to relieve frustrations. But it is hard to listen to. And I think all of us can kind of agree that we aren't super excited about hanging out with somebody who just complains all the time. So I think that the frustration is definitely a valid point. Your teen daughter enjoyed doing things as a team, so you do chores together. Yeah, you can do that. Keep in mind, it's so hard. My sister-in-law said to me this weekend, being a parent is so hard. And it is. It's challenging. And being a part of a team is amazing. That's great strategy. I certainly was known to use that, but there are times in our life when we can't always be a part of a team. And I think we have to remember to try to balance out those things so that our kids grow up with this understanding that it's not always that way. find out which way your teeth. I wanted to, I think a conversation, a really good conversation with really anybody is, when do you feel loved? What do I do? And I do that thing and you're like, oh, they love me. What is that? Is it when I hug you? Is it when I bring you a cookie? Is it when I do your wash? My one of my daughters loves chocolate chip cookie dough. And it just became a thing. Like, she would, if I make chocolate chip cookies, I always save her a little bit of dough. And there have been a couple of times when she was a teenager that she was having a horrible day. So I would make cookies and I'd take her a little bowl full of chocolate chip cookie dough. And her first year of college, she had a couple of really heavy things happening. And I would ship her chocolate chip cookie dough, because that was one of the ways that we kind of had developed over time. She loved it. I made it for her. That was her way of knowing that mom was there and mom loved her. So I think it's really important not just to, say, I do this because I love you, which is a great start. I don't want to deny that, but I think it's more important to really understand, when do you feel loved by me? What's happening? Describe that. Yeah. And then good luck. I have 4 kids and they've all told me, and I get it mixed up all the time. You know how you walk around going, Sarah, Aaron, Emily, Frank, I don't know, whichever kid just walked through the room, you're the one I'm trying to talk to. Well, I also get all of the things that they like mixed up. And I don't know, I can't even blame it on age, right? I think that it's just part of the organization. And one of my children says, if you loved me, you would remember my things. And so I make a really concerted effort. I fail a lot, to be honest, but I do make a concerted effort to think before I say something to her, because I want to make sure that she's cognizant of the fact that I'm putting in that kind of intention. It's because that's super important to her. How do you know if a college guy is interested in you? Lily, come on. You know when somebody is interested in you. There's definitely a list of things. Can you also talk about my video about being disrespected? Ooh, hi Jen, if you're still here. Yeah, so I often will talk to clients who are really frustrated that their teenagers are being disrespectful. And I sit back and I think sometimes, so my sister, I have a sister who has boys, and her boys are about the same age as my son. One's a little older, one's a little younger. And I can remember calling her when they were probably 12, 15, and hearing them go to literally say to their mother, go F yourself. And she was a single mom. And I'd be on this end of the phone going, put him on the phone. And he'd get on the phone and I'm like, are you kidding me? You can't talk to your mom that way, blah, blah. And I was like, what are you doing? Because I don't understand. But over the years, what I came to understand was that she never nipped it in the bud, right? So this is in part where it gets hard when our kids are teenagers. If we're just now kind of, for lack of a better word, waking up to the outcome for whatever it was we did or didn't do. And I want to say this a little bit because I got a lot of smack on one of the videos for blaming parents. And I have such a hard time with that sentiment, because if your kid is 12, 13, 14 years old and they are misbehaving and disrespectful, why is that happening? And I think that's the question I really want people to understand. This isn't intended to be about blame, but these kids come into the world and we, the parent, we are responsible for teaching them how to be respectful, how to be kind, how to be responsible. That's our job. And so if they're 14 years old and they don't know how, or they aren't doing it, first of all, if they don't know how, that's totally us. If they're not doing it, it's also because we aren't consistently requiring it, right? And I will caveat this with, it's not everybody all the time. So, I get a lot of crap in my videos about that too, that I'm generalizing. Yes, I'm generalizing. It's a 60-second TikTok. I can't talk about every variation in 60 seconds. Generally speaking. And in my sister's case, she was a single mom. She was sick a lot. So as a single mom who was sick, she had this much energy to put into her parenting. And because she was a single mom, by 10 o'clock in the morning, it was gone. And I understand. I'm not blaming her, but the reason that her kid can tell her at 12 to F off is because there was no consequence, because mom didn't have any energy. It's not a blame. It's a cause and effect. And I don't judge. Because like her, I was completely imperfect, and there were things I didn't follow through with. And nobody's perfect, right? But I think when we ask ourselves, why is this happening for the middle part of the population, and there are reasons on this end and there are reasons on this end that are different, but for probably 66% of the population, the answer is because we let it happen. We did that. We didn't have a consequence, or we didn't follow through with the consequence, and they came to believe that they could get away with it, and they did. And so they do it because that's what human nature does. Human nature says, oh, I can get away with it. That's why we speed. Come on. That's why we don't pay for something that somebody, that the cashier missed. That's why we don't give back $1 of change, because human nature says, well, if I can get away with it, maybe I will. Now, personally, I believe in karma, so I can't. I'm like, I am the person who gives back an extra nickel. You gave me too much. Or, I rarely speed. I'm not grandmom going down the highway, but I definitely set my cruise control. And I am the person that people get pissed off at because I'm not going 90. I'm a rule follower, I guess, is what I'm saying. because I believe in respect. So I hope that answers your question. So your teenager is being disrespectful. You have to ask yourself why. Not to be judgy, not to be critical, but to sit back and say, what do I need to do different? Where did I fail? How do I become more successful? How can I get more consistent? And then be realistic about that, right? My sister, as a single parent, and I have a list of videos I want to do about this topic, because I was a single mom for 4 years with just Frank, my son, and then I was a single mom. Now, his dad died, so I was really single with the girls. I was single forever. Harlan really wasn't a parental figure to them. So it's hard, and you can't be everything to everybody. And let's face it, even with two of you, if you've got full-time jobs or you work in your home and you've got several kids, there's 13 years difference between my oldest and my youngest, and I can tell you that she got away with she did every single thing I swore none of my kids would ever do, because I was tired. I was tired by the time she came along, and I'm not laughing at that so much as she's a great kid. Everybody else told her, don't do that, mom's gonna freak out. But I think it's more she saw that happening with the older kids, and she just decided, oh, I'm just not gonna push mom's buttons. So if you're teenagers, if you're already there, you have to look at you, look at what it is that you need to do different, and then make a decision. Sit down and say, look, this is not working for me. I feel so disrespected. And this is our house. At the very least, I need respect in the house that I work to pay for. So we're going to make some changes around here. And you describe and you write out if necessary. I would recommend writing out, here are 5 rules. Here are the consequences for breaking these rules. I love you. My job is to teach you how to be a contributing, responsible, compassionate, and kind member of civilization. And that's not happening in the trajectory that we're currently moving. So we need to fix that. And I'm not saying that you're unkind, but right now you're disrespectful. That doesn't work. You don't get to go into the world and be disrespectful. So that's number 1. I'm going to caveat this with some of the most respectful kids on the outside come home and they're disrespectful because that's where they feel safe. It's a reason, it's not an excuse. I would still have the conversation. I would just talk about a little bit. I would teach more emotional regulation and talk about how it can be really hard to be respectful when we're tired and we're frustrated and we're overwhelmed. So we need to figure out a different way to manage those emotions so that that's not coming out in the form of disrespect to me. So I hope that helps. She feels the need for mom time. Katie, and that's really true too. Ask her though. Really ask her, and then really be honest and say, listen, sweetheart, here's what I have going on. What part of this would you like to participate in? Because I can't drop everything. You're special, but this stuff all needs to happen too. So what part would you like to work with me on? Maybe try to include her more in the responsibility piece, or in the part that says, hey, you're important to me, but I'm only one person with so much time. All right. Your son tries to control you in every way. You're taking him to court. Wow. How old is your son, Kimberly? He has to step over all the boundaries. You know, he's 26. Ooh. When somebody steps over all of your boundaries, a child or otherwise, and I know how hard this is, but you must lock the gate. You know, and then they jump the fence and you lock the door. There are some children. So all those people who say, you know, stop blaming the parents, there is a point at which children turn into adults, or adult enough to take responsibility for their own actions. And once I have laid out the boundaries and I have discussed the consequences, one of my daughters said to me this weekend, she said, you know, Mom, I always thought of you as kind of like a don't ask, don't tell mom. And I thought, that's interesting. And I think part of the reason that happened, and we talked about it, is because they knew. And in this case, she's like, yeah, you know, I would tell you I'm going over to Mike's house, and I didn't ask if there was going to be liquor there. I didn't ask if Mike's parents were going to be home, because by a certain point, they knew that my rules were a parent needs to be there, and if there's alcohol, you need to leave. Well, they're normal teenagers, so if they get there and Mike's parents aren't there and there's booze, they're not calling me. And so, you know, they're breaking the rules. But they also know that if they get caught breaking the rules, there will be consequences. So that's kind of like, and I was very consistent with that. Now they still were teenagers and they would still break rules, because that's what human beings do. We break the rules. We push the boundaries. But there were consequences. And so one day I was in a closet in the basement. We had a finished basement, and I was in a closet, and I'm digging through this bookcase, and there's a water bottle, like way in the back, in a closet, way in the back. So I'm like, what? And I unscrew it, and I smell, and it is vanilla vodka. And I'm like, are you kidding me? I knew exactly what kid to go to. And so I went upstairs, I woke my daughter up, and I'm like, here, have some water. And she's like, what? And I almost dumped it in her face. And I said, I found this. And I said, I'd like you to drink it, please. Just go ahead, drink the whole thing. She goes, Mom, that's not mine. Which, of course, you know, she had a story. I don't know if the story was true, but there was a consequence. Your friend, according to you, your friend brought alcohol into my house. Big, big no-no when they were 16. And so there was a consequence. It's that quote-unquote simple, right? Rules, consequence. Every single time. Now, when they broke the rules, I would say, did you understand the rules? Yes. And you broke them anyway. Okay. It's the consequence. Because when you get pulled over by a cop, he's going to say, you were going 75 in a 55. Did you know it was 55? No, officer. Well, it was posted, you know, whatever the distance is. and you get a ticket. Sometimes you don't, but most of the time you get a ticket. That's real world living. Rules, posted rules. You understand the rules. Here are the consequences. You decide you're not going to come to work every day. Do you get your job? Rules, consequences. That's our job. Every single time. Just plain as day. That's our job. Rules, consequences. That's discipline. Discipline is necessary. Punishment is not necessary. Most people get the two things mixed up. That's right. A privilege is taken away. That's a consequence. And every kid is going to have a different value on those privileges. But a punishment is a spanking, screaming, silent treatment, hitting. All of those things, hurting, name calling, those things are not good. But just like the police officer who respectfully pulls you over and says, ma'am, did you know you were going 75 and a 55? You need to say, Aaron, was there a question about whether or not your friends could bring alcohol in the house? No. Okay, then this is breaking the rules. Another time, Harlan and I were down at the boat. Erin was 17. I think she might have, she was 17, but it was her senior year. And I said, you can go home and spend the night at the house, but it's just you and your friends, no boys. Because I'm not stupid. And by then, I probably was okay, if I wasn't okay, but I was turning my head if they were drinking. And I called my neighbor and I said, hey, listen, would you just keep your eyes out to make sure that nothing's amazing is going on over here? And I get a phone call about 12:30 in the morning. Something amazing, does that include boys in the hot tub? And I'm like, are you kidding me? I said, Jill, go over there, please. So my neighbor crosses over, stands outside, and of course it's dark, so she stands and then she turns the flashlight on so only her face lights up. The girls all screamed. And one of the guys said, oh shit. And sure enough, I get a phone call from my daughter. Mom, it was, Aaron, did you know what the rules were? Did you know what the consequence was going to be? It's just that simple. And I don't scream. I might have once or twice, but generally speaking, it was just, you broke the rules, here are the consequences. Love and logic. Yeah. It was, families are families and people are people, and these things are going to happen. Kimberly, your son tells me to do what he says, or pushes me and calls me names. He has problems with substance abuse. That's got to be heartbreaking. And the most heartbreaking thing about that is that you're going to have to draw a very hard line and say, no, I don't deserve that. And if you don't already know what it is, look up the word enabling. Anytime there's an addiction, there's often an enabler in the addict's life. Don't let it be you. And I know what I'm saying too is maybe one of the most devastating things that I can think of to feel, of having to turn away from my child. But if it helps you, number one, substance abuse is an illness, and it's an illness that the addict must want help. in order to be helped. And if they want help, and you can just be a broken record, when you're ready to get help, I will help you find it. Until then, you are on your own. And I know, I mean, I've worked with mostly moms throughout the years, held their hands because they didn't know if their son or daughter was going to come back from a heroin binge. Yeah, I'm so sorry. That's really, really devastating. But the answer for your emotional well-being, and oftentimes for the child, the adult child, is locking that boundary up tight. With 20-month-old twins and too tired to be consistent. Oh man. So 20-month-old twins, what I'm going to say to you is that for the next 16 to 20 months, you're just going to stay tired. And you're going to be tired. This is a hard time. It really is. So pick three things that you want to be consistent with. You cannot do everything, especially not with twins. The 2s and 3s are such tough times, because whereas when our kids are 7, 8, 9, 11, 12, the new boundaries are every 18 to 20 months. With 2 and 3-year-olds, new boundaries are every 6 to 8 weeks, right? Their development is so fast that their skill set and their vocabulary, they're learning so fast that they're pushing boundaries faster than we can keep up with them. So I would say pick 3 things, like no hitting, maybe bedtime, no throwing things. I mean, those seem to be 3 things that toddlers do. And then it's time out. And it's time out at 2 for 2 minutes. Pick up, time out for 2 minutes. Do you know what you did wrong? You threw a toy. When you throw a toy, there's a timeout. I love you. I don't like throwing toys. I do not love throwing toys, but I love you. So we can't throw things. People don't throw things. Grown-ups don't walk around throwing things. You have to make sure that's true, right? Same thing with throwing food, and I would tell all parents everywhere, do not freak out about food. Offer healthy choices. Do not offer junk. If they don't eat, they don't eat. And I think every pediatrician will tell you, maybe not every, but every pediatrician I've ever talked to has said if they're getting 2 meals a day and you're offering healthy food, they will eventually eat. Their mouth is sore, they're tired. Don't freak out about food. Don't let food be something that they associate with drama and chaos. That actually ends up being much more problematic psychologically than eating at 3 o'clock, one meal at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, if that's an option. Jen, my teenage daughter seems to harbor so much anger toward me. So I just had a conversation about this not too long ago. Angry teenagers are angry because they feel something else. Often they don't know how to articulate that something else, right? They're feeling rejected, they're feeling unloved, they're feeling like things are too rigid. They're feeling so many things, but they don't know how to articulate that. They're feeling unheard often. And what's challenging about this is by the time they're angry, by the time they're really angry, it's often because they've hit the end of what they know how to ask for or what to do. So my suggestion to you would be to go for a drive. And to, again, and I'm going to say this again, not because I'm blaming anybody, but because we have to take a look. We're the ones who taught them what to do, right? We're the ones who, and not in, again, it's not all cases, all the time, all across all kids. But in psychology, we use about 2 standard deviations from center to calculate the norm. So that's about 66% of the population, roughly. So if I say approximately 66% of the people who have hit angry, or I'll say that 66% of the time it's the parent who got sidetracked, you know, oh my God, there's so many possibilities, right? When parents lose a job, when parents have emotional or mental health issues, when parents have conflict in their family of origin, when parents have conflict in their marriage, we're not paying attention. I mean, my God, if I think about my parents, you know, they were in their 30s. Their 30s when they divorced. My mom left. My dad started drinking. I was 12. And here I am, abandoned by my mom and my dad because he started drinking, taking care of my siblings. We missed the school bus one day and I couldn't wake my dad up. And so we're all kind of standing there like, what do we do? So I walked my sister and my brother 2 miles down the road. It wasn't uphill both ways, but it was 2 miles down the road, this dirt road, to the babysitters. My brother was 3. And I said, I can't wake up Dad. She called the ambulance. Turned out he was drunk. She took us to school. I mean, that's bullshit, right? And I'm saying that too because that's life, and that's our life too. Now, that wasn't exactly the circumstances for my children, but was I open to arguing with my kids or listening to my children when I was going through all my shit? Probably not. When my son was 18 months old and his dad died, was I an attentive, nurturing mother? No. I was suffocating in my own grief. So we are imperfect. Do I beat myself up about it? No. I look at it and I say, oh shit, ooh, I might not have done a great job. I might not have been the best parent I could be. I was certainly the best parent I was capable of being in that moment, but it wasn't my best self. And so I'm going to get in the car with my teenager and I'm going to take a drive and I'm going to say, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for all those times that you tried to talk to me and I wasn't open to listening. I'm sorry if you needed me and I didn't make time for you. I want to change that. I want to be better. And so I need you to work with me. And I'm not going to be perfect, but I want to try. And I would like you to work with me and I'd like you to try too. I have tried. I know you have. Because we're the freaking adults. We're not going to get defensive. We're going to say, I know you have. Let's try again. Because we're the adults. We are the adults. We have to teach them. Even at 14, 15, 16 years old, we get the opportunity to teach them. But we have to be the adult first. We can't be trapped in our 18, 19-year-old mental bullshit. We have to be the adult, and we have to say, I'm sorry. We have to say, let's try again. Because that anger, they weren't born with that. No, they weren't born with that. They're angry for a reason. You have to find out the reason, if they'll tell you, because if they're already angry, there's a chance that they don't think it's a safe space, that they don't trust the space. I mean, again, I'm not blaming you. This is not the point where any of us need to be judgmental or critical of who we are or what we've done, because we're just humans. That's all we are, as human beings. And so we have to sit back and say, okay, how do I make this better? I'm still doing that as a mother. Still doing that as a mom. Nobody told me what the hell raising. It's not even raising. Even my language is wrong. Nobody told me how to be a mother of adult children. Right? They're adults. Everybody says, let them go. But I'm still a mom. I still am deeply invested in their happiness, their safety, I'm invested. I don't know how to stop that, but they're adults. And there's a completely different way of being a mom when your children are adults, I'm discovering. And I was really bad at it to begin with. And I'm getting better. As a matter of fact, I overheard my daughter say something like that to my brother over the weekend. It was like, Mom's just really working so hard to, which is good, because I needed to. I have abandonment issues. And when my kids grew up and Harlan died, I reached for the thing that was constant in my life, and that was my kids. And now that they're really solidly adults, they don't want me in their face all the time. I have a great relationship with them, but they want me to trust that they can go live their lives. And I do, right? I give advice for a living, so that's problematic. You know, they want to do something. I'm like, oh, well. And our adult children will call us when they want our advice. They will. And if they're not calling you, don't give it to them. My goddaughter's getting married in 2 weeks. And her mom said to me today, I'm a little concerned about the decorations. I said, it's not your wedding. She goes, yeah, but I know her. She's going to get one look at those. She hasn't put any time into them. And I'm like, it's not your wedding. If she doesn't ask you, you can't change the decorations. So anyway, I got off on that tangent somehow. So I hope that answers the question, at least the beginning, or opens the door for the teenager who's angry at you. What do you do for teens who have trouble sleeping, falling asleep? You know, it's interesting. I just listened to a podcast on this, and it's already 10:30, and there's so many more messages. So I'm going to answer this, and then it'll be my last one tonight. So what I'm going to say is that I'm not an expert about this necessarily, but I have some experience with, like, my youngest daughter has a fair amount of anxiety, and she doesn't sleep, and she sleeps fine. She just had trouble falling asleep. So sometimes I think that's the overactive brain, right? So good sleep habits is not taking your cell phone to bed, not taking your laptop or your iPad to bed, no electronics in your bedroom, no TV in your bedroom. How many of us do that, right? The last thing I do before I lay down is play a game on my phone. But you're not supposed to. The sleep experts tell you not to. They say that you need to have a routine. So make their, have the teenager come up with a very specific set of steps that they can do so that there's kind of this routine. The game I play on my phone, if I try to play it any other time of the day, I get sleepy. So I know that my brain associates that game with going to sleep at this point. And I have the light turned all the way down on my phone. And I have a light on in my bedroom. I keep them both on so that when I turn the light off, there's no light. Watch caffeine, watch how much, make sure that right before they turn out the light, and this is so hard for a lot of teenagers, that they're doing something non-intellectual, right? And I know a lot of our kids stay up until midnight studying, which is part of the problem. I read, heard, listened to. I thought this was interesting, so I'm going to verify it before I spend too much time on it. But ADHD shares a tremendous number of symptoms with sleep deprivation. Isn't that interesting? I know a lot of teachers, a lot of other therapists really believe that ADHD has been over diagnosed. And I have to wonder how many of those practitioners that are diagnosing are doing a thorough evaluation of sleep habits. Because I don't even think I know a teenager that's not sleep deprived, which could be part of the insomnia problem, right? Because when we're sleep deprived, there's so many different things that when we're sleep deprived, we can go into a hyperstimulated state. If your kid has ADHD and they're on a Ritalin or a Vyvanse or something, and that's a stimulant, that's not going to induce sleep. If they're having Coke or coffee or iced tea or, God forbid, any of the other heavy caffeine drinks because they have to study or they didn't get a good night's sleep the night before, and so, or they come home and they're so exhausted they take a 7-hour nap and now it's midnight and they're not able to go to sleep. I mean, that there's so many parts of this that, just like when they were infants and you tried to do some sleep training, that same thing is really important when they're teenagers, because they still need a good 8 to 10 hours of sleep, and our teenagers are not getting that kind of sleep. Good night, everybody.